My half-sister ran off with my fiancé and hijacked the wedding I paid for. She thought she'd come out on top. But now, she's broke, alone, and scrambling to get back everything she threw away. My name's Emily. I'm the younger of two girls in what people like to call a blended family. Though honestly, blended sounds way too peaceful for what we had. Growing up, there wasn't much harmony at all. My mom was married once before, to a man who passed away when my half-sister, Chloe, was just 5 years old. Then she met my dad, they got married, and about a year later, I came along. Sounds simple enough, like one of those neat little family stories, right? Not quite. See, Mom had this house she'd inherited from her first husband. It wasn't a mansion or anything, but it was nice. Along with that, she ran a sewing factory. After marrying Dad, she brought him into the business. They actually made a solid team. Mom handled production and people, while Dad took care of the finances. Together, they turned that factory into a profit machine. I still remember hearing them talk one night when I was a kid, thinking I was fast asleep. They were in the kitchen, whispering about the future. "I hope the girls will take over someday," Mom said. "Keep it in the family, you know?" Dad nodded. "That'd be great. Emily already has an eye for design, and Chloe's got a good head for numbers." But what they didn't realize was that Chloe had her own plans. From as far back as I can remember, she made it painfully clear that everything, our house, the business, even the spoons in the drawer, belonged to her and Mom. She'd block the door to her room and sneer. "This is my house. You're just living here because your dad sponges off my mom." I was too little to really understand why she was so nasty. I just wanted to borrow her cool toys or maybe grab a pencil to draw with. But every time I touched anything, she'd yank it away. "That's mine!" she'd scream. "My real dad bought it. You can't touch it." Mom would step in sometimes. "Chloe, sweetheart, be nice. Emily's your sister." But Chloe would shoot back. "Half-sister. And she gets everything. It's not fair." Dad usually stayed quiet during these blow-ups. He'd just ruffle my hair and say, "Don't let it get to you, kiddo." But come on, how could I not? She made every day feel like a battle. One day, I found some colored pencils in the living room. I got so excited. Finally, I could sketch those dress ideas I'd been dreaming about. I was totally in the zone, drawing away, when Chloe stormed in. "Those are mine!" she shouted, snatching them from me and ripping up my drawings. I ran to Mom, crying my eyes out. She held me tight and marched down to Chloe's room. "That's enough!" I heard her yell. "You do not treat your sister like this!" But nothing ever really changed. Chloe always found new ways to make me feel like I didn't belong. And the older we got, the worse it got. Mom and Dad tried to make things feel fair. They'd buy us matching outfits, give us the same gifts for holidays, try to keep the peace. But Chloe still found something to complain about. "Emily's sweater is softer," she'd whine. "Her necklace has more sparkle." She really believed I was the favorite, that I'd stolen the life she was supposed to have. I was around 10 when our parents decided to sell the old place and move into something bigger. I'll never forget that move-in day. I ran into my new room, spinning in circles, totally thrilled. "This is amazing," I said, beaming. Chloe stood in the doorway with that sour look. "Don't get too cozy," she said coldly. "This house belongs to me and Mom. You're just a guest here." My stomach dropped. New house, same old crap. Later that night, I overheard Mom and Dad talking. "I don't know what else to try," Mom sighed. "Maybe she needs to talk to someone," Dad said. "A therapist or something." Mom agreed, and before long, Chloe was going to weekly counseling sessions. But if anything, it just made her more bitter. "Oh, so now I'm the crazy one?" she snapped after one appointment. "You just want to fix me so precious Emily can have her perfect little life." I wanted to scream that my life was far from perfect, with her in it, but I stayed quiet. Fighting with Chloe never helped. As the years passed, she grew more convinced she was the victim in every story. Nothing was ever her fault. Usually, it was mine. She'd rant about how unfair life was, how nobody understood her. "You're all against me," she'd say. "You owe me for everything I've been through." I started doing everything I could to avoid her, staying in my room, hanging out with friends anywhere but home. When she finally finished high school and went off to college in another city, the whole house felt lighter. We could all finally breathe. Maybe time away will help, Mom said hopefully. And for the first time in forever, I felt at peace in my own home. No more walking on eggshells, no more sudden outbursts or side eyes. Those 4 years while Chloe was away were honestly the best of my young life. I threw myself into school, especially anything related to art and design. I'd sit for hours sketching outfits, dreaming up whole collections in my head. Mom noticed and started bringing home fabric scraps from the factory for me to use. "You've got real talent, Emily," she'd say, admiring my designs. And for once, I felt like me, not just Chloe's annoying little sister. I started thinking maybe I could actually turn this into something. After high school, I got into a design program in another city. It felt like everything was finally lining up. The night before I left, Mom and Dad sat me down. "We're so proud of you," Mom said, her voice full of emotion. "You know we'll always support your dreams." I nodded, holding back tears. Then Dad added, "And if you ever decide to come back and join us at the company, we'd love that. Your designs could take it to the next level." I promised I'd think about it. But honestly, I couldn't wait to get out and make my own way. The idea of coming back to live in Chloe's shadow again? Not appealing. College was everything I'd hoped for. And in my second year, I met him, Ethan. He was a bit older, working on his MBA. We literally ran into each other at a coffee shop. I spilled my latte on his shirt. We started talking, and somehow, we just clicked. Hours flew by like minutes. Ethan had this easy charm about him, funny, sharp, and the kind of guy who actually listened when I rambled on about fabric textures or seam lines. It didn't take long before we were officially a couple. As graduation crept closer, we started having real talks about what came next. By then, we'd been together for over 2 years, and things were serious. One night over dinner, Ethan looked at me and said, "I've got a job offer here in the city. What would you think about staying? Maybe, together?" My heart just about did a somersault. I had just landed a junior designer role at a rising fashion label, and the idea of building a life with Ethan, far away from the chaos of my family, was more than a little appealing. Still, I knew I needed to tell my parents in person, especially with Chloe likely to be around. So we planned a trip back home, and I braced myself. But to my surprise, things went smoother than I could have hoped. Mom and Dad took to Ethan instantly, and even Chloe, who usually couldn't resist a dig or two, kept it civil. No jabs, no cold stares. Just normal. It was weird, but in a good way. At dinner, I broke the news. I told them about the job, the city, and my decision to stay. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, smiling, though I caught a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. Then Dad spoke up. "Actually, we had an idea," he said. "What if you opened a branch of the company where you live now? You'd run the design side, create your own line, make it yours." I was stunned. It was an incredibly generous offer, one that let me follow my dreams while still keeping a connection to the family business. "Can I think it over?" I asked. They were totally fine with that, and the rest of the visit felt warm and relaxed. Just as Ethan and I were about to leave, Chloe pulled me aside. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "Look," she started, "I know things haven't always been great between us. But I'd really like to change that. Maybe I could come visit sometime?" I was skeptical, of course, but I gave her a polite nod. "Sure. That sounds nice." Back in the city, life started to settle into a lovely rhythm. I dove into my new job, throwing myself into every project, every design challenge. And Ethan and I? We started talking seriously about marriage, browsing apartment listings, dreaming about what came next. Everything felt like it was falling into place. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call. "Hey, little sis," Chloe said, her voice strangely cheerful. "I'm in town. Mind if I crash with you for a bit?" I almost dropped my phone. Chloe? Voluntarily visiting me? But I remembered her attempt at peace during our last visit, and decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. When she showed up, I barely recognized her. Gone was the bitter, spiteful girl I grew up with. She was smiling, chatty, even affectionate. That first night over dinner, she dropped a surprise on me. "I've been thinking," she said casually, twirling pasta on her fork. "Why don't you come back home? We could work together at the family business. It'd be fun." I nearly spat out my wine. Wait, what? I just started my job here, and Ethan. She brushed it off. Bring him. There's so much potential back home. I shook my head. Thanks, but no. Actually, Mom and Dad offered to let me open a branch here. I'm still mulling it over. I swear, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a flash of the old Chloe. Her smile tightened for just a second, but then it was gone. Maybe I imagined it. Well, she said sweetly, if you're not coming home, maybe I could stick around a little longer? We've got years to catch up on. Against my instincts, I agreed. And shockingly, it wasn't awful. In fact, it was nice. Chloe helped out around the apartment, handled chores without being asked. At night, we'd sit on the couch with wine, swapping stories and laughing over childhood memories. For the first time in my life, it felt like I actually had a sister. One evening, halfway through a bottle of red, she brought up the business again. What if we opened that new branch together? She said. You handle the creative stuff, I'll run the business side. We'd be unstoppable. The idea was tempting. As much as I'd feared her growing up, I couldn't deny she was smart, especially with numbers. And lately, things between us had been good. Let me think about it, I told her. Meanwhile, Ethan started spending more time at my place, and to my relief, he and Chloe seemed to hit it off. I'd come home to find them chatting, laughing like old friends. It warmed me to see two of my favorite people bonding. Ethan and I eventually set a date, 6 months out. I designed the invitations myself, agonized over every flower arrangement, every mini detail. Chloe was right there beside me, offering advice and encouragement like the sister I'd always hoped she could be. We even started making real plans for the business. Night after night, we'd sit with notebooks, planning every little detail. We're gonna be amazing, she said one night, clinking her wine glass against mine. Life was crazy but full. Work, wedding prep, future business dreams, it was a beautiful whirlwind. Then everything changed with one phone call. Emily, it's Dad, he said, his voice shaky. It's your mother. She's not doing well. She's been hiding it for a while, but she's really sick. And I'm drowning, trying to keep the house and the business running. I didn't even hesitate. I'm coming home, I said. When I told Chloe, she let out a sigh. I wish I could go too, but I've got meetings I can't miss. I was surprised she didn't offer more, but I let it go. It's okay, I told her. I'll keep you posted. But nothing could have prepared me for what I walked into. Mom looked so fragile, so pale, like a shadow of the strong woman who'd raised me. The doctor's words hit like a freight train, a tumor. Mom needed surgery right away. I didn't have time to fall apart. I jumped into action, handling the chores at home, helping Dad where I could with the business, and most importantly, just being there for Mom. I arranged to work remotely, squeezing in hours between hospital visits, cooking, cleaning, and keeping everything afloat. Those days blended into each other, a fog of stress and exhaustion. But finally, a break in the clouds, the surgery worked. Mom was stable, on the mend. Through all of it, I tried to stay connected with Ethan. At first, we video chatted every day. Seeing his face on the screen brought comfort, even if just for a few minutes. How's your mom doing? He'd ask, worry written all over his face. She's better today, I'd say, trying to sound upbeat. How's everything there? Is Chloe behaving? He'd laugh, tell me everything was fine. But over time, our calls got shorter, and then less frequent. I chalked it up to the situation. We were both stressed. Things would go back to normal once I got home, or so I told myself. Then, out of nowhere, the calls just stopped. Texts went unanswered. Silence. Heavy and constant. A knot of dread started to form in my stomach and refused to go away. After days of radio silence, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I booked the next flight back, mind racing with every terrible scenario. Maybe Ethan was sick. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Part of me wanted to surprise him, to see his eyes light up when I walked through the door. But when I got to our apartment, the silence that greeted me wasn't the peaceful kind. It was eerie. Off. Then I heard it, a muffled laugh, a giggle. From our bedroom. I wish I could say I paused. Took a breath. Thought it through. But I didn't. I threw the door open like a woman possessed. And what I saw? God, I wish I hadn't seen it. Ethan and Chloe. Naked. Tangled in our bed. Everything stopped. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Time froze for a beat, then slammed back into motion. What the hell? I shouted, my voice cracking. They scrambled, but neither looked especially guilty. If anything, they looked relieved. Emily, Chloe said, casually wrapping a sheet around herself. We didn't expect you back so soon. That's what she led with. They didn't expect me. I stood there, stunned. You didn't expect me? That's all you've got to say? Ethan at least had the decency to look awkward. Chloe? Not so much. She stood up like this was just a minor hiccup in her day. Look, sis, she said, and I flinched at that word. These things happen. Ethan and we're in love. It hit like a punch to the chest. In love? I choked out. You've known each other for what? A few months? Sometimes you just know, Ethan said, reaching for her hand like they were some kind of fairy tale couple. We didn't mean for this to happen, but... he started. But what? I cut in. You just tripped and fell into each other? Chloe smiled like it was a joke I should laugh at. Emily, you should be happy for us. Actually, we were hoping you'd understand. Maybe even let us use your wedding plans. I just stared. Thought maybe I'd misheard. What? Well, everything's already paid for, she said, voice soft like she was explaining math to a toddler. Seems a shame to waste it. We could just celebrate our engagement instead. I don't remember walking out. I don't remember the flight home. All I know is I ended up back in my childhood bed, curled up and crying like the world had ended. Mom and Dad found me like that. They didn't ask questions. They just sat with me, silent, until I could speak. When I finally told them, Dad's face turned a furious shade of red. Mom just looked broken. I'll call her, Dad said, grabbing his phone. This ends now. I heard Chloe's voice screaming through the speaker, shrill, defensive, bitter. Of course you're taking her side. You always have. Well, guess what? For once, I'm the one who got chosen. How does it feel, Emily? Dad's voice was ice cold. If you go through with this, Chloe, you're no longer part of this family. You hear me? There was a pause, then her reply, full of venom. Fine. I don't need any of you. I've got Ethan now. Click. Mom pulled me into her frail arms, trembling with quiet sobs. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I held on to her like a lifeline, trying not to drown in heartbreak. I wasn't a little girl anymore, but right then, I felt like one. The days after that were a blur. Some moments I couldn't even get out of bed. Others, I was laser-focused, ready to drag Chloe and Ethan to court for every cent I'd poured into that wedding. During one of those fire-fueled research sessions, my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered, voice tired. Hello? Emily. It's Helen. Ethan's mother. I almost hung up. But something in her voice, shaky, remorseful, made me pause. I don't even know what to say, she began. We're so sorry. So sorry. I sat in silence as she talked, her voice breaking. She told me how heartbroken she and her husband were, how they couldn't believe Ethan would do something like this, let alone with my sister. We always thought of you as part of our family, she said. We want to make this right. It won't fix everything, but we'd like to reimburse you for all the wedding expenses. A few days later, a check arrived, every dollar I'd spent, covered. And just like that, a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying lifted off me. The day that was supposed to be my wedding was getting closer. And with it, a realization, I couldn't go back to the city. Not yet. It held too many ghosts, too much pain. Over dinner one night, I looked up and asked, would it be okay if I stayed here for a while? Maybe work at the company. They exchanged a glance. Then Dad smiled. We were hoping you'd say that. We could really use your eye for design. And just like that, a new door opened. I threw myself into the work, designing like a woman possessed. Every sketch, every collection felt like a message to Chloe and Ethan. Look what you gave up. Look what you'll never have. The day they were supposed to get married came and went.